All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, YouTube, wherever, whenever you're watching this. My name is Rosh, and this is a video series that I'm putting together for the Fractal Audio AxeFX III. This is going to be some AxeFX III basics, and then I will cover some more advanced topics in the future. So a little about me. I'm a guitar player and guitar tech working in the LA area. Some of my clients include Def Leppard, Steve Vai, Dweezil Zappa, Melissa Etheridge, Perfect Circle, and some others. So I wanted to give back to the Fractal community and show some of my approaches on how to build presets using the AxeFX III. So in this episode, we're going to be covering high gain amps. So let's talk about it. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a quick build, and we're going to start with, we're going to start with the input. We want to move the output over here. And then we're going to put an amp and a cabinet, and we're going to connect all those. Now, if you haven't already done so, make sure you reset the channels on the blocks so that you go to the defaults as well as here. Okay, so just like dirty amps and everything else, I always like to start with the cab first. So with high gain amps, generally 412s are good. And so why don't we do that? Okay, so this is the 5150. And we're going to do something with like V30s because that'll help high gain amps kind of cut through. And some of the things that you have to consider for high gain amps is most of them have a really, really, really huge low end. So my traditional formula is always like a dynamic mic and a ribbon mic. And what we can do is if there's too much bass, we can always mess with a low cut or start pulling the ribbon mic down. So the dynamic mic helps the amp cut through, and then the ribbon mic kind of helps smooth out the tone. So what we're also going to do is go to the preamp section and make sure we bring the low cut to about 100 and the high cut down to about 8500. That helps it sit in the mix a little bit better. And let's pick the 5150. So there we go. Here's the stock settings. Okay, pretty decent right there. One of the things that you can always do is listen to each cabinet by themselves. So with just the 57, pretty aggressive. And then if we listen only to the Royer, pretty scooped, pretty dark. So now the combination together. So as you can hear, the amp does have a lot of low end, but by putting the low cut here, we've eliminated a lot of that boomy bottom. So we don't want that down there. Okay. So let's crank the gain up. Let's pull the bass down a little bit. And let's pull the master up just a here. Sounds pretty good. So let's try a different amp. Something like the Uberschall. So the Uberschall definitely has a lot of low end, Euro Uber. And one of the things that we want to do is when you're switching between amps, reset the channel. So it goes back to default. So as you can see right here, the depth of this amp is really, really massive. So you can hear that it just clips the low end like crazy. So we want to bring the volume of that down. As you can hear, it's a pretty dark amp. And when I say dark, I mean dark at the default setting. So one of the things we can do is bring down the ribbon mic. And of course, let's bring down the bass, crank the mids up a little bit. Okay, so you see that I pulled the ribbon mic down because if it's at full, it'd be just too dark. I mean, even an amp like this, we might be able to just get away with just the 57. So as you can see, I'm not being too picky about how much or how little of the ribbon. I mean, even an amp like this with just the 57 sounds great. Okay, so let's take a look at another high gain amp. Something maybe like the dual rectifier. So again, this is more like the modern high gain kind of stuff that you would see. We're not quite in the, let's say, gent territory, but I would take the same approach with those amps too. So here's the dual rectifier. Let's do the red modern. As you can hear, the amp has a lot of upper sizzly kind of mid-range. We can crank that up just a hair. And then let's crank this a little bit. So again, you hear a lot of that boomy low end. We want to get rid of that. Cut the bass a little bit, crank the mids. And let's crank the gain. So yeah, so a lot of it is really just pulling down the bass, and then don't be afraid to move these up. It helps the amp kind of cut through. Again, even if we get rid of the ribbon mic and just use the 57, sounds great. The 57 really helps these high gain amps cut through while retaining the gain. I would still probably keep the ribbon in there and probably do something like this. So yeah, nothing much to it. After you find the tone that you like, I would add a reverb. Let's do something like this and go to the same settings, 50, 3 dB, and then we use the input gain to add how much the reverb we want. Now, another approach for the high gain thing, instead of boosting the gain, what we want to do is actually boost the input of the amp. So what we would do is actually use an overdrive pedal. So we'd use something like a tube screamer. Let's use this T808, but pull the drive all the way down and then push the level all the way up. So what we're doing is we're boosting the input of this, but tube screamers and pedals like it, what they do is they have a low cut in the bottom half. So what's happening is the pedal actually like pulls a little bit of low end out of the guitar and then boosts the input of the amp. So you end up getting more gain hitting the input without having to drive the preamp section of the amp too hard. So you still get high gain. It's a lot tighter in the low end, and you don't have to mess with cutting the bass down. So check this out. So now we can start pulling the bass. We can start pushing the gain just a hair. But you see the difference. Gets a tone to be really aggressive rather than really boomy when you take the pedal off. And let's pull this back up. Here's without the pedal. So here, it just really kind of like cleans up that low end. There's less of that boom. You can still chug without basically making the bottom end of the amp kind of clip. And it makes the tone really aggressive. Again, you want to think in context of that you'll be using this kind of tone like in the context of a band, so you want the tone to cut through without it being too harsh. Probably pull that up to -9. Yeah. So again, you got a pretty aggressive tone without the boomy low end. And again, if we go back to the Ubershaw, let's say, it'll also clean up the low end on that. So if you go to the Euro Uber, and then let's pull that volume down for sure. And we probably want to just pull the level of this ribbon mic down. Okay, so here's the default settings. I would still cut the bass, move the mids and treble up a little bit. See how it just kind of really cleans up that low end, which is really great for a lot of these high gain amps, because they have a lot of that low super sub bass kind of thing happening. But if you're going to be playing like palm muted heavy riffs like that, it just really cleans up the low end by putting that overdrive pedal. And again, no gain, just the level. And then if you need it to be brighter, this amp's pretty dark, I would probably move the tone knob up a little bit. And it's pretty tight at the low end. Yeah, I haven't played Metallica in a while, but hopefully that kind of helps. So again, you have two approaches with the high gain stuff. My preferred approach is actually the overdrive in front of the amp, but you can always do some of the other stuff as well, just cutting the bass, boosting the gain, etc. So there's some basics for working with high gain amps for the AxeFX III. I'll be covering more stuff in the future. If you have any questions, by all means, feel free to reach out, and I'll see you guys next time.